In order to create a group, you are going to want to go to the Groups page. You can find that by clicking on Groups at the top of any page on CK-12. If you've never created a group before, you'll see this screen. At this point in time, you have the option to enter a group name. Let's say Jumpstart 2016. You can choose to enter a group description or a theme, but you're definitely going to want to pick between a study group and a class. Let's talk about the difference between these two. As you can see, in a study group, everyone can share resources. This is great if students want to create a study group and share resources with each other, or if you want to collaborate with a group of teachers when working on curriculum or other group projects. For a class, you as the creator of the class lead that class, and only you can share resources and assign practice. This is specifically important if you don't want other students in your class or students in your class to create those resources and share them with your group, and if you want to be able to see and assign different practice activities for your class. At this point, I'm going to skip the group description, but I can go back and add that in later. And I'm going to choose green as my theme. And now I'll create my group. As you can see on here, this gives you the instructions to help students join your group or other teachers. It'll send out this email, which you can click on to send the email instructions, or you can send them the group link. This works really well if they already have a CK-12 account and are logged in. Then they just click on this link and they're automatically added to the group. Alternatively, if they go in later, they can use the group code, and we'll show you how to use that in a minute. For each group, you'll have the option to click on Home and give you a general overview. Once there is content in this group, you'll see how the home changes. For a class, you'll have assignments and reports. We'll spend more time going through those in our next session on practice. Finally, you get down here where you have Q&A, and this is true for both groups that are classes as well as discussions. If you're new to this, you'll see a little tour, or you can skip that. Here, I could ask a question such as, what do you want to study this summer? And post that question. Students and other members of the group can then answer, and you can continue a dialogue at this point. Your shared resources will be where you'll find any resources that you need for your group and that you've shared specifically to this group. We'll show you how to share those resources in a few minutes. Next, you'll see the members section. In this case, because I created this, I'm the only one in this so far until I share that group link or that code and add members to my groups. Your settings is your last option. And you'll see at this point in time that it looks like your home screen because that's the basic information you need to start. This information will stay in your settings regardless of what else comes up on your home screen. If you scroll down to the bottom of settings, there's a couple other options. One, you can choose to turn on or off the email notifications. Let's say I want people to be notified when I share new resources or new members join the group. Or I could have chosen to show the email notifications for Q&A every time someone posts on the Q&A, but maybe if I want that to be pretty active, I don't want emails going out every single time, so I turn that off. I can also edit the settings on that and say maybe every week I share an update or every so many hours or something like that. On the whole, I could choose to turn off Q&A if I didn't want a discussion as part of my group. And I could choose to allow students to post anonymously. This would be extremely helpful for students that are shy, have a lot of questions, and not really sure what they want to post. But in general, it's useful to leave that off and make students post with their name, and that way you know which students are asking questions and where things are coming from. Because you've created this group, you'll also see the option to delete the group as a whole. So if you're done and you want this group to be removed, you can delete that. Otherwise, just ignore that and move on with your day. If you go back to your groups page, you'll now see this group, Jumpstart 2016, and any activity happening in that group show up. Once you have a number of groups on here, you can sort those groups based on whether you're leading or you're a member of those groups, and whether they're classes or study groups. So if I unclick classes, you'll see that I have no study groups that I'm currently a part of. If I re-click classes, that particular class shows up again. At this point, I can create another group, or I could join a group. And this is where that 5-digit code, if you shared it with a student or a colleague, would be entered in, and then they could join that group. If I go back into Jumpstart, you'll now see that the home screen no longer has the settings features on it. It now includes the latest activity that's happened within that group. In this case, the discussion question that I posted. If you've made assignments or things like that, those will also show up within this home screen. We'll wrap up here with the basics of groups and talk more about sharing resources in our next part of this session. You have two major options to share content within a group. Let's start by using the Share to Groups option found on most of our modalities. Since we haven't explored a lot of elementary content, let's use a topic from there as an example. I can go down to grades 1 through 5, and let's pick grade 4 if I was teaching that. Maybe I'm teaching a unit on time, and I want to talk about looking at the clock and telling the time. From here, I could pick any modality, such as a video, a read, practice, etc. And once I'm on that page, you'll see on the left-hand side a Share to Groups option. If I click this, I can share it to an existing group, or I can create a new group. Note that if you create a new group, this will bump you to the group screen where you'll get to create a group, and then you'll need to come back and share this resource to that group. Since I've already created the group that I want to share this with, I can click on Jumpstart and click Share. At this point in time, if I went back to my groups page and into Jumpstart, I can click on the Shared Resources option. You'll now see the video that I shared to this group. I can filter any resources, which is especially useful if you've shared a lot to any particular group, by the type. In this case, you'll see it filtered according to video, or the members, such as myself or another member who's shared to the same group. I can also show only those resources shared by me or shared by others if I'm looking to review content. If we go back to the page on looking at the clock and telling the time, you'll see two other modalities for this concept. One is practice, and while I can share this practice to a group, please note that sharing this is simply sharing the resource. It's not assigning that practice. To assign practice to a group, you'll need to do that from the group itself, and we'll be talking more about that in our practice session next time. If I go back and click on the Plix, you'll notice that our Plix format is not set up in the same way with a Share to Groups feature on the left side. In this case, I'm going to want to copy the URL and then go into my group and from here, the best way to share a resource that doesn't have a specific Share to Groups feature is to do it through Q&A. Instead of asking a question, I can say, check out this great Plix, and paste in the code. At this point, you'll see my note about checking out the Plix, as well as the link to the Plix, so that students and other colleagues can access that URL and go directly to that Plix via Q&A. The option to copy a URL and share it works both within Q&A as well as for any external resource in which you might want to share something from CK-12. So always feel free to just copy that direct link to the page and share that via an email, via some other LMS that you might be using, or anything like that that might not already be perfectly integrated with CK-12. While sharing a URL is one option for sharing a resource, whether that's a branch, a concept, a FlexBook, or even a schools page on CK-12, we also have a great little SharePlane. So let's explore that for a minute. If I go down to Life Science, you'll see this little Share Me option that floats on the bottom right of your screen. If I click on the green airplane, you'll see a number of different options. I can share this directly in an email to various friends or colleagues, or even my students, or I could share this on social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. My last option is to share via Google Classroom. I can click on this, and you'll see that since I'm logged into Google Classroom, it pops up my options. I can begin by choosing a class, let's say Jumpstart 2016, and then an action. As you can see, I can create an assignment, ask a question, or make an announcement. If I make an announcement, I simply have the option to type in some sentence or comment and then post that to Google Classroom. If I ask a question, I can put my question, some instructions, and maybe even a date that I want that question answered by. I can also note that students can reply to each other or edit their answers. And I can choose whether it's a short answer or a multiple choice answer. Finally, I could choose to create an assignment. In this case, I could talk about life science, and I could say, pick 2 topics and take down 3 key ideas from each topic. And I could change the due date accordingly. Now I can assign this to that class within Google Classroom. You can now see this posted on your classroom as your simple assignment with the instructions and how many people have completed it versus not. In this case, this class has 2 students already created in my Google Class, and so that's why it's showing 2 that are incomplete, since I just barely posted this assignment. If I go into a student account that's in this class, you can see that this assignment shows up basically similar to the version in the teacher account. I still have the instructions, as well as the link to that page in CK-12. And then the student can choose to open this and mark it as done when they're completed. They can also create something to go with it, or they can add this to Google Drive, link, or a file. One final note about sharing content via CK-12's little green airplane. You'll find this in Sims in a slightly different place. If I open a simulation, you'll see that the little green SharePlane is in the top right corner of a sim. However, you have the same options to share via Google Classroom, social media, or an email. So while it might be in a different place, you still have all of the features in simulations that you would for most of our standard modality pages. We encourage you to share this content both within the groups and externally via social media or your Google Classroom account. Whether you've simply customized an existing book on CK-12, like we did here with our right triangle trig book, or you've created one from scratch, we encourage you to publish your content on CK-12, provided you have full rights to do so. As you can see on the schools page, or in the community contributed tab for any search, other users have already done amazing work to create more humanities content and also to tailor CK-12 content to specifically address the newest state and international requirements. We hope that you too will consider adding your work to this effort and helping others find resources they can use. Let's go back to our library for a minute and talk about publishing this book. Since this book is in draft mode and not finalized, meaning I haven't made it ready to see, it won't give me the option to publish. I'll need to go in and edit my draft, make sure everything is how I want it to be, and then click Finalize. Now that I've finalized this read and said that it's ready to go, you'll see the option to publish on the left-hand side. I can click Publish, and then I have three options. I can say this was CK-12 content derived, which in this case it was because I started with a read from CK-12 already and added in some videos and an extra resource. If I had customized this from somewhere else that I had the rights to use it from, I would choose Customized from Other Content. And if I wrote it from scratch, I could note that this was original content that I wanted to share with the world. At this point, I could choose to publish this book, or in this case, this particular read. Note that even though this is published, I still have the option to go back in and edit. This is where that draft option is extremely important, because I can choose to make any edits and updates and save in draft mode and continue to work on that until I'm ready to share the newest version, in which case I would finalize it and the newest version would show up live on the site because the book is already published. Let's talk about where this shows up. If I go down to the details for this book, you'll see that this was already tagged with basic trig functions. So let me open up that page. If I go to the Community Contributed tab within that concept, and I scroll down, you can see the different reads that have been created, including the one I customized under the Jumpstart demo account. You'll find this both within the concept page here under Community Contributed and via search under the Community Contributed tab for any content related to that. If I go back to my book and I click on Edit and then the Details tab, you'll see that this is tagged to that concept node, Basic Trig Functions. If I wanted to add another concept, I could click on the concept node and type in trigonometry and hit enter to search. Now I could tag it to another concept that I might want it to show up under within CK-12. This is especially useful if you've drastically changed the content within your read, or if you've actually created a new read from scratch and want to tag it to a concept on CK-12. Let's say, since this is about right triangles, I can also tag it to Trig 100. Now that I have two concepts within there, I have the option to delete either concept and only have it go and show up within that one concept that's left. If you don't see the little X there, it's because you've tagged it to a concept and you need to add a new one in before you delete the original one that you want to be removed. Besides the Community Contributed tab, the other place that you'll find community content is under that schools icon. Once you're on the schools page, you can pick your state and navigate to see what other schools have published their content to share with others. In order to get your content attached to your school or district, you're going to want to currently just email support@ck12.org. However, we will shortly be creating the feature so that a point person within your school or district can tag all of your content to these resources. This is especially important if, say for example, you're a district such as El Paso that has created a number of different resources for your school or district. By tagging all of your content to your school or district and publishing it together, students and teachers can easily find those materials in one place and explore all of the content that you and your teammates have customized or created from scratch. So whether you have published your content and tagged it to your school or district page for easy access, or you've simply published it under the Community Contributed tab within our site, we thank you for enhancing the resources available on CK-12 and helping to further our mission to access quality resources for free. The newest way to share or access content from CK-12 is through the FlexBook app. This is currently available for iOS and Android, but we're also working on a desktop version. The biggest advantage of this app is the ability to access content offline if you download any of our books or chapters within our book. To access this app, go to the App or Google Play Store and search FlexBook. From here, you can download and then open your FlexBook app. You'll see a Get Started option, and now you can sign in with Google or with your username and email. After signing in, you can start browsing. You can pick topics from the math branch, the science branch, or even other topics on CK-12. At this point, you'll see our standard books for CK-12, but soon we'll be working on getting UGC or user-generated content on this as well. Those are the books that show up under the schools page or the community contributed tab, and is really important since you probably want to share your version of a CK-12 book. Let's say I was teaching engineering. I could go into that engineering piece and open up the Intro for High School. At this point, you'll see I have the option to download the full book or any section, but I can take a minute to explore this book before I choose what parts I want to download. Let's go into Chapter 2. You'll see the various sections within this chapter, and you can open any one of those and read the material within it. You can also navigate at the bottom by clicking on the page and then going back to section 2.2 or 2.1 or forward into any particular section. At the top right, you'll also see the ability to navigate within the whole book. You can see your various chapters, and you can open up or expand those chapters by clicking on the little arrow at the end and toggling it down. Since the introduction has no sections, let's pick Chapter 2. And you can see the various sections within that chapter. You'll notice that your offline library just puts you back to browse because I haven't added anything within there yet. So let's go in, open that engineering book, and download the full book. Note that at this point in time, you can open any of the chapters since you've downloaded the entire book into your offline reader. Please note that, especially for a book that you're working on, you may want to choose to just have students download an individual chapter or a couple of chapters so you can continue to update future chapters and so that they're only taking up the space on their device with whatever part they're currently using to study. Let's say I'm going to open up Chapter 3. I can now see this chapter and navigate just like I did when I was using it online. But I can also click on the chapter and go to the top right and look in my offline library. You'll now see that that library includes this entire book. I can go back to subjects and add, let's say, a chapter from an algebra book. Say middle school math, grade 8 concepts. If I just download a single chapter and then open that chapter, you'll see the various components within there, and then back in my library, I'll see Middle School Math Grade 8, which just includes Chapter 2 at this point. I can always add other chapters from that book and have them show up in my offline library as well. As a note, we also have a regular practice app as well as one for Sims that you can find by searching for CK-12 in the App Store. We'll talk more about those in the next 2 sessions when we discuss practice and then interactives in more depth.